everyone, and welcome to Empower Your English.
Yeah, welcome.
I'm so glad you decided to join us today as we take a deep dive into a topic that's, well, it's absolutely essential.
It really is.
If you want to make those big dreams a reality and achieve all those goals that you set for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something that we talk about a lot on this show because we believe that personal growth and finding peace of mind and, of course, learning English are all connected.
Yeah, they're all part of the same journey.
And they can really help you make incredible things happen in your life. So we're going to dive deep into self-discipline, that inner strength that helps you stay focused and keeps you going even when things get tough.
The secret ingredient.
It really is the secret ingredient, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yeah.
For success in pretty much every area of life, whether it's about improving your health or becoming fluent in English or, finally launching that business idea that you've been thinking about.
Or writing that book.
Or writing that book, yes.
Yeah.
Self-discipline is at the heart of it all.
It really is the foundation.
And to help us understand this better, today, we're going to be focusing on the work of Angela Duckworth.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's an incredible researcher and author who's really helped to make the science of self-discipline something that we can all grasp and relate to.
Yeah, she's made it accessible.
You might know her from her best-selling book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance.
A fantastic book.
Have you had a chance to check it out?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a must-read.
So our mission today is to really unpack what self-discipline and grit truly mean, and even more importantly, how you, our listener, can actually develop these qualities. We're going to be drawing insights from a bunch of different materials that we've been looking at.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover.
We'll try to guide you through it all so you don't feel overwhelmed.
Definitely.
And so that you can come away with some real aha moments.
Light bulb moments.
Exactly. So let's dive right in. One of the first things that really made Angela Duckworth think deeply about all of this came from her own experience as a teacher.
Interesting.
She noticed something really peculiar while working with students in New York City.
Okay.
She observed that sometimes the students who weren't considered the most naturally gifted,
right,
the ones who maybe didn't have the highest IQs, actually ended up outperforming the students who were labeled as the smart kids.
The ones everyone expected to excel.
Exactly. And this made her wonder, why is this happening?
What else is at play here?
What else is at play here? Yeah, because clearly it wasn't just about how much natural talent or intelligence someone had.
Right. It challenged the traditional view of intelligence as the sole predictor of success.
So tell us a little bit more about Angela Duckworth.
Yeah.
Who is she?
Well, she started her career as a teacher in New York City, working with students who faced a lot of challenges. And it was during that time that she began to question this common belief that intelligence was the only thing that mattered for success.
Right.
Because, as you said, she saw firsthand that some students who weren't necessarily the most academically gifted were still achieving great things.
Yeah.
And that's what sparked her curiosity.
And this is where this powerful idea of grit comes into play.
Absolutely.
Duckworth defines grit as this fascinating combination of passion and perseverance.
It's not just about being interested in something.
Right.
It's about having that deep commitment to your goals.
That stamina.
And the resilience to keep going even when things get really hard.
Yeah, you really have to stick with it.
It's about long-term dedication.
And so after her time as a teacher, Duckworth decided to delve deeper into this concept of grit.
She went on to study at Harvard and then the University of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And she really focused her research on trying to understand what allows people to achieve success over the long haul.
And what did she find?
Well, her most significant finding, the one that really turned heads, was that self-discipline actually plays a more important role than IQ.
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
It was a groundbreaking discovery that challenged the traditional emphasis on intelligence as the main driver of success.
So what exactly do we mean by self-discipline?
Well, it's the ability to control your impulses and actions, to stay focused on your goals, even when faced with distractions or temptations.
Yeah, it's that inner strength that helps you stay on track.
Exactly. And this is a great opportunity to introduce our first learned expression for today.
I love these learned expressions.
So in English, self-discipline is self-discipline.
Okay.
And in Spanish, it's autodisciplina.
Autodisciplina.
And it means the ability to control your feelings and actions in order to achieve your goals.
So can you give me an example of how to use this in a sentence?
Sure. You could say Angela's research shows that self-discipline is more important than talent.
Perfect. So simple, but so powerful, right?
Absolutely.
Now, it's important to note that Angela Duckworth's own journey wasn't always smooth sailing.
Yeah, Even someone who studies grit faces challenges.
Exactly. She encountered her fair share of obstacles along the way.
As a woman in academia, she faced a lot of criticism.
I can imagine.
Her ideas were often rejected.
Right.
And I'm sure there were many moments of doubt.
Yeah, it's not always easy to challenge the status quo.
Especially in a field like that.
But what's really inspiring is that she didn't give up.
No, she persisted.
She stayed committed to her research. She kept testing her ideas, gathering data, and writing for years.
And that brings us to our second learned expression.
Right.
To stay committed.
Okay.
Which in Spanish is mantenerse comprometido.
Mantenerse comprometido.
And it means to keep working on something even when it gets hard.
So how could we use that in a sentence?
Well, you could say, Angela stayed committed to her research for years before seeing results.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of what she embodies, right?
Absolutely.
Her own journey really illustrates the power of staying committed even when things get tough. And eventually, all of her hard work and dedication paid off.
Yeah.
In a big way.
It did.
When she published her best-selling book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance.
A book that really resonated with people all over the world.
What was it about the book that you think really captured people's attention?
Well, I think it was her message that success isn't just about being smart.
Right.
It's about having that passion, that perseverance, that willingness to work hard and stick with things even when they get challenging.
It's about having that grit.
Exactly, and believing that you can grow and improve.
It's not just about your innate abilities.
It's about developing your potential.
So we've talked about what grit is, but how does this actually translate into our daily lives?
Right. How do we actually put these ideas into practice?
What does self-discipline and grit look like in action?
Well, Angela Duckworth provides some really practical examples in her work.
Okay.
It can be as simple as waking up a little earlier each day to give yourself some quiet time to study or to work on a personal project.
Yeah, that takes discipline.
Or it could be about learning to say no to distractions.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Like social media or mindless scrolling.
Oh, yeah.
When you know you should be focusing on something more important.
Like practicing your English.
Exactly.
Or it could be about pushing through those moments when you feel bored or frustrated and you just want to give up.
Because let's be honest, those moments happen to all of us.
Oh, they do.
But it's about having the discipline to keep going.
And what I find really encouraging is that Duckworth believes that grit and self-discipline are not fixed traits.
That's right.
You're not just born with them, or
They're not set in stone.
They can be learned and developed over time.
It's like training a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you practice, the stronger you become.
So how do we go about training that muscle?
Well, we'll get into some more specific strategies later on.
Right.
But the first step is to simply be aware of the power of self-discipline and to believe that you can actually cultivate it.
And you know what's interesting is that she's even applied these principles in raising her own daughters.
Oh, wow.
Which I think makes it all the more relatable.
Absolutely.
It's not just a theory. It's something that she's put into practice in her own life.
Okay.
Now let's have a little bit of a debate here.
Oh, I love a good debate.
To make things a bit more spicy.
Let's do it.
All right, so on Empower Your English, we often talk about what really drives success, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think is more important for achieving your goals?
Okay.
Having strong discipline or being really motivated?
That's a great question.
Because some people say, it's all about motivation. You've got to be excited and passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah, that initial spark is important.
But then others say, no, it's discipline. That's the key.
It's about showing up consistently.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Exactly. What do you think?
Well, I think both are important, but in different ways.
Okay, I can see it.
I think motivation is what gets you started. It's that initial spark that ignites the fire.
It's the fuel.
But discipline is what keeps the fire burning.
It's the engine.
It's what keeps you going even when the motivation fades.
Because, let's be honest, motivation comes and goes.
It does. It ebbs and flows.
But discipline is about having that steady commitment.
And Angela Duckworth actually has a great quote about this. She says,
What's the quote?
"Enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare."
Ooh, that's a good one.
And I think that really speaks to the importance of discipline. It's about having that endurance to keep going even when you don't feel like it.
Because real success requires more than just fleeting moments of enthusiasm.
It does. It requires that sustained effort over time.
So how do we cultivate that endurance? How do we build that discipline?
Well, there are a number of strategies that we can explore.
Okay, I'm eager to hear them.
But first, let's take a moment to focus on your English learning.
Right.
And introduce some new vocabulary that's related to this whole idea of grit and self-discipline.
Vocabulary is always important.
It is. It's the building blocks of language.
So what words do we have today?
Well, the first word is perseverance.
Okay, perseverance.
And in Spanish, that would be persistencia or seguir adelante.
Seguir adelante. I like that.
It means to keep going, to not give up, even when things get tough.
It's about pushing through obstacles.
So can you give me an example of how to use this word in a sentence?
Sure. You could say, Angela's perseverance helped her finish her book.
Perfect.
Despite facing numerous rejections along the way.
That's a great example.
Okay.
The next word is to resist temptation.
To resist temptation.
And in Spanish, that would be resistir la tentación.
Resistir a la tentación.
So this is all about having the self-control to say no to things that might distract you from your goals.
Yeah, like those tempting snacks.
Or that urge to check your phone every 5 minutes.
Or that Netflix show that's calling your name.
Exactly. So
Right.
how could we use this phrase in a sentence?
You could say self-discipline means resisting temptation and staying focused on what's important.
And finally, we have the word consistency.
Consistency.
And in Spanish, that would be constancia.
Constancia.
This is all about showing up regularly and putting in the work day after day.
It's not about being perfect all the time. It's about making steady progress over the long haul.
You could say success comes from consistency, not occasional greatness.
That's a powerful statement.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, so we've talked about self-discipline, grit, and some important vocabulary. Let's delve into some of the more nuanced insights from Angela Duckworth's work.
Oh, I'm ready.
So in her Google Talk, she shared her own definition of talent,
Okay.
which I found really interesting.
I'm curious, what was it?
She defined talent as the rate at which you increase in your skill with effort.
Oh, that's a unique way of looking at
It
it.
is, isn't it?
So it's not just about having a natural ability.
It's about how quickly you learn and improve when you put in the work.
It's about your learning curve.
Exactly.
And she emphasized that talent isn't everything.
It's just one piece of the puzzle.
And her data revealed 2 key findings.
Okay, tell me more.
First, she found that even the most talented individuals don't always keep showing up.
That's interesting.
She even referenced that famous quote by Woody Allen.
What was it?
You know, the one that says that 80% of success in life is just showing up?
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
Now, while Woody Allen may not be a scientist, and that specific percentage might be debatable,
Right.
the underlying message is so true.
Absolutely.
You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't consistently put in the effort,
You won't reach your full potential.
it's not going to get you very far.
Consistency is key.
Have you seen that play out in your own life or in the lives of people you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've seen people with incredible natural abilities who never really achieved much because they lacked that discipline and commitment.
It's like they had all the ingredients, but they never actually baked the cake.
That's a great analogy.
And her second key finding was that high achievers in any field tend to exhibit this daily discipline of always trying to get a little bit better.
That constant striving for improvement.
Yeah, that Japanese idea of kaizen,
I've heard of that.
which is all about making small, continuous improvements over time.
It's those incremental steps that lead to big results.
So it's not about making huge leaps overnight.
It's about the steady accumulation of small efforts.
So does this resonate with you?
Absolutely. I think it highlights the power of consistent effort and the importance of focusing on those small daily improvements.
It's not about being perfect. It's about being better than you were yesterday.
Exactly.
Now, Duckworth also talks about the concept of deliberate practice.
Deliberate practice. What's that?
It's a term that she learned from Anders Ericsson, who's an expert in the science of expertise.
Okay.
And it's all about practicing with intention.
With a specific goal in mind.
Exactly. It's different from just mindlessly going through the motions.
Like just repeating something over and over again without really thinking about it.
Yeah, she contrasts it with what she calls undirected practice.
Okay.
So imagine you're learning to play a musical instrument.
Right.
Undirected practice might be just playing through songs you already know.
Without really focusing on improving your technique.
Right. Or maybe just noodling around on the piano without any specific goal in mind.
Yeah, it's just playing for fun.
Deliberate practice, on the other hand, is much more focused and intentional.
Yeah.
It's like having a practice session with very clear goals.
So for example, if you're learning guitar,
Yeah.
you might focus on a specific technique like bar chords.
And you'd really work on getting that technique down perfectly.
And you'd seek out feedback from a teacher or a more experienced player.
Right, and you'd constantly refine your technique based on that feedback.
Right, so it's a very active and engaged process.
Duckworth actually outlines 4 key elements of deliberate practice.
Oh, wow. What are they?
First, there's extreme intentionality.
Extreme intentionality.
Which means having very clear and precise goals for each practice session. You're not just practicing for the sake of practicing. You're practicing to improve specific skills.
And often focusing on those areas where you're weakest.
Yeah, where you need the most work.
Okay, what's the second element?
The second element is 100% focus.
100% focus.
This means eliminating all distractions.
So putting your phone away.
Turning off the TV.
Finding a quiet space where you can really concentrate.
And giving your full attention to the task at hand.
Yeah, no multitasking.
What's the third element?
The third element is immediate and information-rich feedback.
Immediate and information-rich feedback.
So this means getting feedback as soon as possible after you've practiced something.
Right, and it should be specific and actionable feedback.
So it's not just, good job, or you need to work on that.
It's more like, you're rushing the tempo here. Try slowing down and focusing on the rhythm.
Or your pronunciation of this sound is a bit off. Try adjusting the position of your tongue.
Yeah, that kind of feedback.
Very specific and helpful.
And the fourth element?
The fourth element is reflection and refinement.
Reflection and refinement.
So after you've practiced and received feedback, it's important to take some time to reflect on what went well, what you could have done better,
and how you can adjust your approach for next time.
It's about constantly refining your process.
So how can we apply these principles of deliberate practice to our English learning?
That's a great question.
Think about it. Are you just passively listening to podcasts, or are you actively engaging with the material?
Are you setting specific goals for your practice sessions?
Are you focusing on your weaknesses?
Are you seeking out feedback and then using that feedback to refine your approach?
It's all about being intentional and purposeful with your learning.
Don't just go through the motions.
Engage with the material.
Push yourself out of your comfort zone.
And embrace the process of continuous improvement.
Now let's talk about the role of environment and culture in developing grit.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting angle.
Angela Duckworth highlights the idea of gritty cultures.
Gritty cultures.
Yeah, cultures that value and encourage perseverance and resilience.
So can you give us an example of a gritty culture?
Sure. She mentions Finland's and their concept of sisu.
Sisu.
Which is this Finnish term that embodies inner strength and determination.
Okay.
It's about having the courage and tenacity to keep going even in the face of adversity.
So it's deeply ingrained in their cultural identity.
It's part of who they are.
And she explains that being part of a culture that values these qualities can actually strengthen your own mindset.
It can make you more resilient and persistent.
So it's not just about individual effort.
It's also about the social and cultural norms that surround us.
Yeah, our environment plays a role in shaping our behavior.
And she also connects this to the cultures within organizations.
Like companies or institutions.
She mentions Google West Point and the Seattle Seahawks football team.
Okay.
As examples of organizations with strong cultures that foster grit and commitment.
So what is it about these organizations that makes them so gritty?
Well, they tend to have a strong sense of shared identity and values.
Mm-hmm.
They have a clear mission and purpose.
Right.
And they create an environment where people feel supported and encouraged to push themselves.
So it's not just about individual grit. It's about collective grit.
Yeah, it's about creating a culture that fosters perseverance and excellence.
And this raises an important question for all of us.
What's that?
How does the culture around you,
whether it's your family, your workplace, or your community,
influence your own levels of grit and self-discipline?
It's something to think about.
Now, Duckworth has also done a lot of work on how we can measure grit.
Yeah, that's important.
She's most famous for her work with the cadets at West Point,
where she developed the grit scale.
Right. The grit scale is a questionnaire designed to assess an individual's level of grit.
But measuring grit is not as straightforward as measuring something like IQ.
Yeah, it's more complex.
IQ tests have been around for much longer, and they're more standardized.
And they're harder to fake.
Exactly.
The grit scale, on the other hand, relies on self-reporting.
So people's responses can be influenced by a number of factors.
Like social desirability bias.
Where people might answer questions in a way that they think will make them look good.
Or they might not have a fully accurate perception of their own level of grit.
Or they might be influenced by their current mood or situation.
And Duckworth also mentioned something called frame of reference bias.
What's that?
Which is the idea that The people you compare yourself to can affect your score on the scale.
So if you're surrounded by people who are incredibly gritty,
you might rate your own grit lower.
Even though you're actually quite gritty compared to the general population.
Yeah, it's all relative.
So it's important to be aware of these limitations.
And because of these limitations, Duckworth actually advises against using the grit scale for making high-stakes decisions.
Like hiring or admissions.
Instead, she suggests looking for other indicators of grit.
Like evidence of progress and continuity in a person's resume or work history.
Yeah, or using mini-grit experiments in hiring processes.
Mini-grit experiment.
So that's where you give candidates a challenging task.
And then observe how they respond to feedback and setbacks.
It's a way to assess their resilience and perseverance in a more realistic setting.
So it's about looking beyond just a score on a scale.
And trying to get a more holistic picture of a person's character.
Now, one question that often comes up is, how do we decide what to be gritty into?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Especially after we finish our formal education.
When the path ahead might not be so clear.
There can be a lot of pressure to choose the right career.
The right field of study.
The right path in life.
And a fear of making the wrong choice.
Ending up feeling lost or unfulfilled.
So what advice does Duckworth offer on this?
Well, she suggests that we start by looking at our genuine interests. What are the things that we find truly engaging and enjoyable?
The things that we're naturally drawn to.
These interests often start to emerge in our early teenage years.
So think back to what you were passionate about when you were younger.
What were you curious about?
What did you love to spend your time doing?
Those early interests can often provide clues about your true passions.
And in addition to interests, Duckworth also highlights the importance of purpose.
What gives your life meaning?
What are your core values?
What are the things that you believe in deeply?
What impact do you want to make on the world?
These are the questions that can help you identify your sense of purpose.
And when you can align your interests with your purpose,
you find that sweet spot.
Where you're both passionate and motivated to make a difference.
That's where grit truly thrives.
Now, of course, there's also the practical consideration of reality.
Right.
You need to figure out how you're going to make a living.
How to pay the bills.
But Duckworth suggests that we shouldn't let reality be the only factor driving our decisions.
We should start by exploring our interests and our purpose.
And then figure out how to make those things work within the constraints of reality.
It's about finding a balance.
So we've talked a lot about grit and the importance of sticking with things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also this idea of the power of quitting.
The power of quitting.
Yeah.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
But sometimes quitting can be the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's not always about blindly persevering.
Sometimes you need to let go of things that aren't serving you.
So how do we know when to quit and when to stick with it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Duckworth uses a great analogy here. She talks about dating.
Dating.
Yeah, she says that if you're in a relationship that you know isn't right for you,
it's better to end it.
Even though it might be painful in the short term.
Because it frees you up to find a partner who's a better fit.
It's about quitting in the service of not quitting.
Quitting in the service of not quitting. I like that.
It's about strategically letting go of some things.
So you can focus on what truly matters.
And this applies to our careers, our goals, and even our relationships.
It's about making conscious choices to align our efforts with our long-term vision.
So it's not about giving up easily.
It's about being discerning.
And making sure that you're investing your time and energy in the things that are truly aligned with your values and goals.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about grit, self-discipline, deliberate practice, the role of culture, the challenges of measuring grit.
The importance of finding your purpose, and even the power of quitting.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned.
And what it all means for you, our listener.
We've explored the idea that grit is essential for achieving success.
That it's often more important than natural talent.
We've learned that grit can be developed through deliberate practice.
By setting clear goals, focusing intently, seeking feedback, and constantly refining our approach.
We've seen how the culture around us can influence our own levels of grit.
And that we can create gritty cultures in our own families, workplaces, and communities.
We've discussed the challenges of measuring grit and the importance of looking beyond just scores on a scale.
We've explored the idea of finding our purpose and aligning our efforts with our values.
And we've even talked about the power of quitting, strategically letting go of things that aren't serving us.
So what can you do with all this knowledge?
Well, first of all, take some time to really think about how these concepts apply to your own life.
To your own goals and aspirations.
Where do you need more grit?
Where could you benefit from more self-discipline?
What are you truly passionate about?
And how can you align your efforts with your purpose?
Here's a final thought for you to ponder.
Aye.
Considering the difference between talent and grit.
That initial aptitude versus that sustained effort and passion.
What long story are you currently writing with your own efforts and perseverance?
What legacy are you building?
How are you shaping your own narrative?
And how can you apply the principles of deliberate practice to your English learning journey or to any other goal that is meaningful to you?
Because ultimately, it's not just about reaching a destination.
It's about the journey itself.
And the story that you create along the way.
Now, specifically for our English learners out there, we want to challenge you to identify one area where you want to cultivate more discipline.
Okay.
Maybe it's committing to a daily practice routine.
Or focusing on improving your pronunciation.
Or overcoming your fear of speaking.
Whatever it is, we encourage you to set a goal.
Make a plan and stick with it.
And we'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah?
Share your challenges and your successes with us.
Tell us about your journey.
We might even feature some of your inspiring stories in a future episode.
We believe in you.
We do. We believe in your ability to achieve fluency.
And to reach your full potential.
Through consistent effort and a healthy dose of grit.
So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the power of grit and self-discipline.
We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
And we'll see you next time on Empower Your English.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Keep practicing.
Keep learning.
And keep growing.
We'll be here to support you every step of the way.
See you soon.